start by asking all of you to take a nice deep breath and gently close your eyes. Keep them closed because I want you to consider this question. What if fear were just a feeling? Right now, I want you to try to imagine how your life might change if you knew for sure that that statement were true. Okay, open your eyes. And I'm not talking about mortal danger, kill or be killed, fight or flight fear. I'm really just talking about the everyday, pedestrian, sometimes pervasive fear that impacts our lives. So think about it. All the decisions that you make on a daily basis, how many of them are driven by fear? Time spent projecting fearfully into the future, ruminating about the past, worrying about what other people think about you. These are all ways that your fear mind, or your mafia mind, as I like to call it, might just be running your life and keeping it small. But it's possible for you to actually recognize that fearful thought or that limiting belief before it dictates your actions. You have a choice. And you having a conscious knowledge of that choice is the key to being free from psychological fear. So all of my life, the way that I dealt with anything that I was afraid of, I just considered myself fearless, right? So I had this persistent and annoying fear of heights that really got on my nerves. And so I took up the trapeze to just crush it, right? Because my only strategy was just shock and awe. That's all I knew how to do when it came to fear. It was just get it, you know? And I only learned when I became a psychotherapist that actually forcing yourself to do things that you fear is actually called being counterphobic. And it's not nearly as sexy as being like a fearless badass, which is what I thought it was, probably more accurate. But all of that changed in 1997 when a series of events got set into motion that completely changed my relationship to fear and the course of my life. I was leaving a career as a talent agent to become a psychotherapist. And as I was graduating from grad school from NYU, the single most important and defining experience of my life happened. And I met the man who would become my husband, Victor. And nothing would ever be the same again. So Vic was a widower whose young wife, Donna, had died of cervical cancer when she was 29 years old, leaving him with a 5, a 3, and a 9-month-old. And by the time I came on the scene, those cute, sweet, cozy little boys were now angry, acting out teenagers losing their minds. And they all lived in this huge, rambling Victorian house in beautiful Elizabeth, New Jersey. Sounds good, right? Don't you want that? I didn't care. I was so in love. Vic could have had 22 teenagers, and I would have been like, excellent. What's the problem? Bring it. Let's do it. So I hired a man with a van, and I moved from the Upper West Side of Manhattan to my new home. About 4 months into my relationship with my new family, my father, who was not sick, was only 61 years old, dropped dead of a heart attack. And about 2 months after my father's death, I was with my sisters cleaning out his house, and I find this big, weird lump in the base of my throat. So I call my mother, even though she's not a doctor, but she kind of thinks she is. So she gets out her big book and she looks it up and she said, oh, it sounds like this really benign thyroid thing called a goiter. Just go to the doctor when you get back. So I come back and I go to the doctor, and it's actually not a goiter. It's actually a malignant tumor the size of a plum. So being diagnosed with cancer sucks, just FYI, in case you were wondering, like, how was that experience? It was not great. At any point is scary and painful, but for me it was triply painful because I was already madly and deeply in love with these boys who'd lost their own mom when they were just babies. So painful, but I was also super busy, right? Because I had a brand new psychotherapy practice to build. I had our own family therapy schedule, which was vast, trust me, to organize, you with you, us together, you alone. It was a whole thing. And then we were actually redoing every single room in this huge, potentially beautiful Victorian home, right? So I was busy. I had things going on. So about, I would say, 3 months after this experience, I get a clean bill of health. It's like, excellent. All the doctors are like, you are fine. And yet I kept torturing my then boyfriend, now husband, being like, I feel like something's wrong. I just still feel like something's wrong. So basically doctor shopped in Manhattan until I found one who would remove the other half of my thyroid based solely on my non-medical feeling. And what was discovered was a more serious cancer that could move to lungs and bones. And so now I have the same surgery that I just had less than 6 months ago, more radiation, and this time, actually isolation followed. Because as much as I was trying to rock that fearless badass trip, this was a little heavy. I was like, really? Universe, this is what we're doing. This is how it's happening right now? Why? So about, I would say maybe 3 months after that, things were starting to get brighter. The family therapy was kicking in, the feeling in the home was better, and I was like, okay, maybe that was just, keep in mind, people, we're only at the year mark. You getting that all that happened in under a year? So I was like, maybe that was just a really rough year, but now we're moving into something next. And on the second happiest day of my life, the happiest day was my wedding day, but the second happiest day of my life, Vic asked me to marry him, and I obviously said yes. And I know it was 15 years ago, and I still want to be like, hi, want to see my ring? That's right. So we were going out to celebrate our engagement, and Vic was already in the car in the front of the house, and I was coming out to the back, and it was actually the porch. And all I could see, I was trying to understand what I was seeing. I could only see the light funnels from the car. And what I could see, this is what it looked like. It was like this huge wedge of a person like this who was squatting in this weird way. They've got a white tank top on like that. And I'm looking at their face trying to see maybe I know who it is. And I see they have a stocking on their face. And then I look down and Vic is on the ground. And this guy is kneeling on Vic's back with a 9mm to the back of his head. So we got robbed at gunpoint in our home with one of the boys in the house. And this, my friends, is what I say completed my PhD in fear. Because I went from being pretty fearless to now being afraid all the time. And although the therapist in me knew I was having a traumatic response, the human in me was incensed. I was so pissed that I was afraid to be alone in my own house. I couldn't stop running that visual of what could have happened. I had waited my entire life for this man, this family, my man. And in a moment, hi, people, it was perfect. No stretch marks, right? This was like perfect. And in a moment, it could all have just been ripped away. It was just brutal. So I knew I had to figure it out because I knew that there was no way that I was going to live the life that I was meant to live, right? Rock my dharma, be of service, if fear continued to dictate my mind and my actions. And I knew nobody else could. So it was in that moment that I dedicated myself to really decoding that mind-body connection to fear. And I spent the next 15 years in my busy private practice, really researching this with my clients, and in the trenches of my own therapeutic process, and learned how to teach my clients and my students how to kick the crap out of their fear mind. So I got about 4 things that I want to tell you today that I know for sure about fear. Fear is a feeling most of the time. And this is great news, right? Because you change your feelings all of the time. Unless you live in an active war zone, the fear that you feel on a daily basis is a feeling inspired by a fearful thought about something that might happen in the future, right? You can change your mind, which will change your feelings, which will change your behavior and your life. You have the power to do that. Fear can also be a really wise teacher, and you know what? It's completely unavoidable. So if you are in mortal danger, your fight or flight kicks in so you can fight or flee and save yourself. And trust me, if someone has a 9mm to the back of your head, fear is a super adaptive response, right? But most of us walk around as if someone has a gun to our head all the time, and they don't. And what you lose by living in that heightened state of fear is your ability to make conscious choices in your life. You know what? Your mafia mind, as I like to call it, your fear mind, is a bully. And it operates the same way as the mafia. The mafia extorts money. Your fear mind extorts the future joy and happiness from your life by scaring the crap out of you with what might happen, right? If you speak your truth, what might happen if you do what's in your heart, or if you allow yourself to be vulnerable. But you know what? A lot of things might happen, and a lot of things won't happen. So how about you harness the mind-blowing power of your own intention to create what you want to happen instead of living in fear of what might happen? How about that? Because you can do that. And the final tool that you will need to use fear to inform your decisions but not allow it to dominate your decisions, is present moment consciousness. You must be here now, because it's the only way that you'll be able to catch that fearful thought or that limiting belief before it becomes your reality. You'll be able to recognize it, reject it, decide something different, but only if you are present. And the best way that I have found in all of these years for my clients and myself to do this is through a dedicated daily meditation practice. So for those of you who just left the room because I mentioned meditation, oh, come back, come back. If you have a butt and a couch, you are a meditator, my friend. You do not need to be Deepak Chopra or a Buddhist monk to rock an effective practice. And it's those daily moments in stillness and silence that will buy you reaction time in your waking life. So when you're responding, you're making conscious choices. When you're reacting, you're being driven by fear. So I want to leave you with this thought. I have no doubt that you have the power to literally rock your choice, to choose something better, which will liberate you from the mental fear, the mental prison that fear creates. Because you, my friends, deserve to live fearless and free. Thank you.